How come it's acceptable for William and Kate to fly on a private jet? When it's Harry and Meghan though, it's unacceptable. It's bang out of order, it's wrong, why are they doing it? The double standards again. So yesterday, Harry and Meghan and their 2 children landed in the UK at Birmingham Airport. And it isn't a very busy airport, Birmingham Airport, it's a quiet one. And they arrived yesterday around midday lunchtime after flying on a private jet from California. And the model of the jet was a Bombardier Global Express XRS luxury long-range business jet from Van Nuys Airport in Los Angeles. And Harry and Meghan chartered the jet with Planet 9 Privateer, so a California-based private aircraft operator. And the overall cost of hiring the jet was £9,000 per hour of the flight time. So that's 90 grand it came to. But what people need to remember is Harry and Meghan are going to pay that themselves. The British taxpayer isn't going to fund it, guys. Harry and Meghan are coming back as private citizens, so they're going to pay for it. The 90 grand is going to come out of their own money. So I don't see why people are making such a huge issue out of this. I mean, they're coming back, private citizens, they're going to keep away from everyone, yet everyone's making such a big fuss about it, and they're saying, why are they coming back? Why turn up on a private jet, talk about, cause attention, wanting to be noticed? Well, actually, they only managed to get a picture of the private jet at the top. That's it. They didn't get any photos of Harry and Meghan or the children departing the plane. They had nothing. It was so... The security was bang on. There was obviously no police escort when they left the airport. But I don't see all this criticism and scrutiny against the Sussexes. They paid the private jet out of their own money, okay? So it's not like, oh, they've come over here and we're having to pay out for them. It's not like that, guys. Harry and Meghan have paid the 90 grand for the 10.5-hour flight themselves. So can we just get that straight right now, please? But also, what I can't fathom is when William and Kate go on a private jet, which the British taxpayer has to fund, absolutely fine, absolutely acceptable. No worries. No, they deserve to go on a private jet. We don't mind paying for them. But when it's Harry and Meghan, you'll get shirty and snappy and go, how dare they go on a private jet? How can they afford that? Well, Meghan's got her business, which is booming, so that's bringing in an income. I mean, why do you always have to put a negative on such a happy event? Obviously, you don't like the news that Harry and Meghan are coming back to the UK, but you'll just have to deal with it because they're here now. So, and they're going to the Cotswolds where it's peaceful and tranquil. And yeah, the media and all the trolls and the haters, you just need to stay away from them, really. Simple as that. And obviously, I've had all these problems from these royal journalists on TikTok thinking they're an expert. But yeah, if you don't want to watch my videos, literally just scroll on if you don't want to watch it. As simple as that. Just flick up and keep going down. Simple as that. But you watch them, so I don't understand you people. Just scroll on. If you don't want to watch me, that's fine, but don't watch me and then make a post about me and then start going, oh, this person doesn't know what she's talking about. One, I never fat shamed Princess Charlotte. I never took the mick out of Kate's cancer. I was just saying, why can't Kate be a bit more honest and open about what type and stage of cancer she had? And this person's just going off on one, and obviously she's a royal bootlicker. I wouldn't be surprised if she works at the palace. But yeah, I mean, obviously she'll have something to say about the private jet probably, but I won't be watching. But yeah, so it's perfectly acceptable for William and Kate to go on a private jet. No one's going to moan. Everyone agrees with it. No issue. But when it's Harry and Meghan, there's a problem. There's always a problem when it comes to Harry and Meghan with the public. They don't like it. They don't like it that they can fork out for that lavish expense, but they deserve it. I mean, what they've been through with the press, the media, the trolls, the haters, the royal family briefing against them. Don't you think they deserve a nice, quiet, luxurious life? But yeah, But the difference is Harry and Meghan paid 90 grand out of their own pocket for the private jet flight, whereas these two work shy layabouts that don't do a day's work and just shake hands when they go on a royal tour. Yeah, British taxpayer pays for it, or another country. But that's fine. Oh well, it's because they're the future king and queen. That's just a stupid excuse. I've never heard anything so laughable, but there we go. But the double standards and the hypocrisy is disgusting. The Daily Mail, the Express, the Sun, the Star, everyone. Oh, they've arrived on a private jet. It's only a private jet. And as I said, they forked out for it themselves, the cost, whereas these two never fork out for anything because they literally just sponge off the UK taxpayer and no one says a word. And this is why Harry and Meghan can never win, because the press are always behind William and Kate. They've always got their backs, and obviously now Harry and Meghan have landed in the UK media will have to be fully behind William and Kate. They can't go and support Harry and Meghan, because there was a journalist 2 days ago on the Daily Telegraph, and she said the trouble is Harry and Meghan eclipse William and Kate, headlines, everything. And they didn't like it, the other journalists. And she didn't like Harry and Meghan, but she could admit that the Sussexes could easily outshine William and Kate, eclipse them. So people can actually admit that the Sussexes knock it out the park, and these two just don't have what Harry and Meghan have. So, yeah, but they paid for it themselves. Can we just get that straight? 90 grand altogether, and they paid for it themselves. Okay, have a good day, guys.
Squaddies, can somebody please explain this one to me? Because apparently a private jet becomes a national emergency the moment Harry and Meghan are connected to it. Suddenly, everybody is counting miles, calculating fuel, talking about emissions, and acting like the Sussexes have personally marched into the Treasury and emptied the biscuit tin. But hold on, who is actually paying for the trip? That's the question. If Harry and Meghan are paying their own travel expenses, why are people screaming about taxpayers' money? They're not reaching into your pocket, they're not sending the bill to your house, they're paying for their own journey. So why is the outrage suddenly turned up to 11? And here's where I think ordinary people start scratching their heads, because when William and Kate travel in connection with their royal duties, there can be public funding involved through the royal system, and that's not automatically wrong. They're working royals. There are official duties, there are security and logistical requirements, fine. But then keep that same energy when you're talking about Harry and Meghan. You can't spend 1 minute saying, well, William and Kate have official responsibilities, and then turn around and scream, Harry and Meghan are wasting taxpayers' money. If the Sussexes are footing the bill themselves, that's a completely different conversation. It's their money. They earned it. They decide how to spend it. That's how being financially independent works. You don't get to become the unofficial manager of somebody else's bank account just because you don't like their lifestyle choices. And let's be honest, this is where the criticism starts looking less like concern about money and more like a personal obsession with what Harry and Meghan are doing. Because if a private jet is the problem, then make that argument consistently. If environmental impact is the concern, apply the same standard. If the issue is luxury travel, fine. But don't suddenly discover all three issues whenever Meghan gets on a plane. That's not a serious debate, that's picking your favorite target. And I'm sorry, but regular people aren't stupid. They see the headlines, they hear the outrage, then they ask the most basic question imaginable. Wait, who paid for it? Bingo! That's where the conversation changes. Because if Harry and Meghan paid for their own flight, then maybe the royal commentators need to put the calculator down for 5 minutes. Stop counting the Sussexes' money and start applying the same standard to everybody. Because if we're going to inspect receipts, squaddies, let's check all the receipts. Now let's talk about the money, because this is where the whole argument starts getting a little funny. Harry and Meghan are no longer working royals. They stepped away. They built a life outside the palace. They have their own income, their own businesses, their own responsibilities. So if they decide to fly privately and pay for that flight themselves, why are some people reacting like Harry has just walked into the British Treasury with a shopping bag? Seriously, where is the evidence that the taxpayer is paying their private travel bill? Because if Harry and Meghan are paying, then it's their money. Simple. Think about your own life. You work all month, you get paid, you decide to spend some of that money on a holiday, a better car, a nice meal, whatever. Your neighbor might think it's ridiculous. They might say, mate, that's too expensive. Okay, and? It's not their bank account. They don't get to stand outside your house with a calculator because they don't approve of your spending habits. That's basically what this argument starts to sound like with Harry and Meghan. People aren't just questioning the trip, they're questioning how the Sussexes choose to spend their own money. Scotties, and here's the thing. You can dislike private jets, you can think they're extravagant, you can have concerns about emissions. Those are legitimate opinions. But then say exactly that. Don't dress it up as a taxpayer scandal if the Sussexes are footing the bill themselves, because that's where the conversation becomes unfair. And I can't help noticing how quickly the standard changes when we're talking about Harry and Meghan. Suddenly, every flight becomes a financial investigation. Every hotel becomes breaking news. Every expensive outfit gets examined like we're preparing evidence for court. But when it comes to the Sussexes, somehow people feel entitled to decide what they should and shouldn't spend. Why? Because they left the royal family? So they're independent enough to pay their own bills, but apparently not independent enough to spend their own money without getting dragged for it? Come on now. If the criticism is about private aviation, have that conversation. If it's about environmental impact, have that conversation. But if we're going to start talking about public money, then let's be accurate. Because ordinary people understand the difference between "I don't like how you spent your money" and "you wasted my money." Those are two completely different accusations. And if Harry and Meghan paid the bill themselves, the second one simply doesn't fit. So maybe the next time somebody starts shouting about the Sussexes' private jet, ask one very boring but very important question. Who actually paid for it? Because sometimes the simplest question is the one that blows the whole argument apart. Squaddies, now let's turn the spotlight around for a minute, because this is where I think the double standard becomes impossible to ignore. And before somebody starts shouting, "But William and Kate are working royals," yes, they are. Nobody is saying they should be unsafe. Nobody is saying they should hitchhike to their next engagement. Of course, they need appropriate transport and security when carrying out official duties. But here's the problem. If you're going to lecture Harry and Meghan about private jets, money and the environment, then apply that same standard to everybody. That's all we're asking. Don't suddenly become an accountant because Meghan stepped onto an aircraft. Don't become Greta Thunberg's cousin because Harry took a private flight. And please don't pull out the taxpayer argument every time the Sussexes travel when they're paying their own expenses, because that's where people start asking questions. William and Kate are part of a publicly funded institution. Their official duties in travel can involve public money through the royal system. Harry and Meghan stepped away from that system. So why are some commentators treating the Sussexes' private spending as though it's coming directly out of the pockets of ordinary British families? That's the bit that doesn't add up. And here's what really annoys regular people. It's not necessarily that William and Kate travel, it's the fact that the rules of conversation seem to change depending on which royal we're talking about. When it's Harry and Meghan, look at the money, look at the jet, look at the carbon footprint, think of the taxpayer. But when it's William and Kate, suddenly everybody develops selective amnesia. Hello, the calculator hasn't disappeared. If private aviation is the issue, then let's talk about private aviation. If taxpayer spending is the issue, then let's talk about taxpayer spending. If environmental impact is the issue, then let's talk about environmental impact. But don't create one rule specifically for the Sussexes and another rule for the Waleses, because that's not accountability, that's picking sides. And Harry and Meghan shouldn't have to apologise for spending money they've earned simply because certain people don't like how they live. But at least be consistent, because you cannot have one rule for Kensington Palace and another for Montecito. If we're checking the receipts, squaddies, check everybody's receipts. That's when this conversation gets really interesting. And this is where I want to bring the whole thing home, because honestly, the private jet isn't even the biggest issue here. The biggest issue is the outrage. That's what jumps out. If somebody wants to argue that private jets are bad for the environment, okay. If they want to argue that flying privately is excessive, fine. If they want to talk about money, let's talk money. But then keep that same energy for everybody. Don't bring out the giant calculator every time Harry and Meghan book a flight and then suddenly lose the calculator when William and Kate travel. That's where people start going, hold on a minute. And regular people are actually very good at spotting that sort of thing. You don't need a royal expert sitting in a fancy studio for 2 hours explaining it. Most people will just look at the story and ask, who paid for the flight? That's it. That's the first question, because there's a massive difference between spending your own money and spending public money. If Harry and Meghan are paying their own expenses, then you can disagree with their choice. You can think the flight is too expensive. You can think private aviation isn't your cup of tea, but calling it a taxpayer scandal doesn't suddenly make it one. And this is where I think some of the Sussex critics walk straight into their own trap. They spend so much time watching Harry and Meghan's pockets that you'd think they were personally responsible for balancing the national budget. Where are they flying? How much did it cost? What are they wearing? How did they get there? Brother, breathe. They're living their lives. And if we're genuinely concerned about public money, then let's have a much bigger conversation about how public money is used across the working royal family. That's fair, that's transparent, that's consistent. Because William and Kate being working royals doesn't mean every question about public spending should disappear. And Harry and Meghan being private citizens doesn't mean every pound they spend becomes a public referendum. Different circumstances, different money, different rules. So let's stop pretending this is simply about one private jet. The real issue is whether the same standards are being applied to everyone. Because when the criticism seems to switch depending on whether it's Harry and Meghan or William and Kate, people notice. And once ordinary people notice a double standard, good luck putting that toothpaste back in the tube. So squaddies, here's my position. If we're talking about money, show us the receipts. If we're talking about the environment, apply the same standard. If we're talking about luxury, apply it across the board. And if we're going to investigate spending, open all the receipts. Thank you all for watching. I am your host, Miles. And remember, squaddies, if we're checking receipts, check all the receipts. Because apparently I've just become the royal family's accountant, and I'm doing overtime for free. Somebody better send me a payslip. If you enjoyed the video, hit that like button, share it with somebody who needs to hear this, and of course, subscribe. Love you all, God bless you, and have a blessed week ahead. Until next time, squaddies, catch you in the next episode.